we go. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the End in Mind podcast. I'm your host, Caitlin. I'm super excited about today's topic. We're going to speak with Nikki about hypnosis in business. But before we get into that, Nikki, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into this practice?
Of course, Caitlin. Thank you. Thank you for having me here today. I'm super excited for this conversation.
Me too.
So, my name is Nikki Gangemi, and I'm the founder of Mindful Matters LLC. I took a few pivots in my life from actress to teacher to entrepreneur, and each one of those required an identity shift or upgrade, so to speak. So, teaching was something that I fell into. Acting was always the dream. It was something I wanted to do since I was a little girl. And then finally, at 23 years old, following a 5 year breakup, I didn't know who I was without him. So I decided now's the time to take this leap and move to LA and pursue the acting dream. And I did it for a year. And then I made the decision that I didn't have what it took. I listened to a lot of the suggestions of others that acting is a difficult industry. You don't make it unless you know someone, all the suggestions people give. And when I came back home, I didn't know what to do. And then I did what other people basically other people's dream for me was to be an elementary school teacher, like so many others in my family. So I said no until I said yes. And then I did it for 15 years unhappily.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. And it was really an early midlife crisis. I was turning the big 4-0. And I thought, wait a second. I did everything I was told to do. I got the college education. I got the job with the pension and the benefits. I bought the condo. Where is my husband, kids, and white picket fence? That was supposed to come with this certainty and stability package that didn't exist in acting.
Yeah.
So that's when I decided to just be open to opportunity. And a coworker one day said, instead of, I ran into him at a coffee shop in a parking lot and I was complaining yet again. And he said, Nikki, instead of complaining, why don't you just bloom where you're planted? I didn't know what that meant, but I
Wow.
had a feeling it was important. So I put it on the back burner. Months later, I think I meet the guy of my dreams. I met him on Plenty of Fish. Turns out he was not the guy of my dreams, but we were talking earlier about people come into your life for a reason, a season, or a lifetime. He was a reason, and he said to me, Nikki, if there's something that you want to do, if you want to speak, if you want to help people to love themselves and feel confident, then just start speaking in your living room. You don't wait for opportunity to come your way, you pave the way. And with that, bloom where you're planted bubbled back up to the surface, and then Mindful Matters was born. So I piloted it as a program to help kids manage their thoughts and emotions in the school where I was teaching. And then the district decided to shut it down after a year. And I thought this time, instead of giving up, so to speak, and going on a plane back home, metaphorically, what can this look like? And that's where I was introduced to a business coach who said, why don't you go from local to global, from working with kids to working with adults, and help them get out of their own way, help them change the stories they've been telling themselves that keep them playing small or maybe living someone else's dream for them. And that's how I pivoted into what I do today.
Wow, I love your story. I know so many of our listeners will resonate with it too. And knowing that this wasn't what you desired to do and taking the leap when it's all right there in front of you, right? Even though it is really scary. A lot of our listeners will message me and tell me how afraid they are, when they're trying to take this leap. Did your own beliefs come up at that time? And did you utilize your own tools to help you?
Oh, absolutely. Yes. I mean, I was listening to, you have to wait until you get married. I mean, when I was thinking about leaving my job, well, you're only one income. How are you going to pay your mortgage? You should wait until you get married. At least there will be two incomes. And I started thinking about this, I would say maybe 12 years in to my teaching career. 3 years went by and I was turning 40 and I'm like, wait a second, I can't keep waiting. I
Yeah.
don't want to get to 50 and then I'm looking in the mirror and I'm still like, what am I doing here? I felt like a square peg in a round hole.
Yeah. Oh my
Kind of
God.
thing. So I said I had to just, do the work to change that mindset. Like, who says, is there anybody else out there who's doing this? Because if they're doing it, then it's humanly possible. And that
Yeah.
means I can do it too. So I made the decision to resign and I was scared. I remember I had like a physical resignation letter that I dropped into the mailbox, those things back in the day. And and I was shaking. I was like, oh my God, this is real. Like, I can't take it back.
Yeah.
And yeah. And so I resigned, finished out the year. And then when I walked out, yeah, I thought I would be hit with freedom. And I was hit with fear because it's like, oh God, now what? Those paychecks stopped. So
Yeah.
lots of mindset work, lots of learning different mindfulness practices to stay present, stay in the moment, don't get too far ahead, things like that, so that you could sleep at night.
Yeah, exactly. A lot of us entrepreneurs, I always say my first few years of being in business, like I didn't sleep. I just operated on little to nothing and how
Yeah.
horrible that was, for my body, my mind, my soul. And that's
Uh-huh.
why I'm so passionate about what you provide to business owners at any level. In my own experience, we were talking about this before we got on for our listeners. Hypnosis in my business has totally leveled up my company. I mean, overnight. And I didn't realize how much I was hanging on to, as you mentioned, the fear, the things that people say, and how much it can really stay in our bodies and manifest through the actions that we take. Like for me, it was very subconscious. I don't know if that was your experience too.
Yes, it's very subconscious. And then they become our beliefs are filters. So we start looking for evidence to prove that we're right. That's important for many people. And it's kind of like when you go car shopping and suddenly you see that color, make, and model everywhere on the road. Well, those limiting beliefs work in the same way too. They're the filter, and now you start seeing all the reasons and lack of opportunity, so that because that's what's aligning with the beliefs that you have. When you use a tool like hypnosis, helps to shift those beliefs and install new and empowering ones. Now you could see a different world.
Yeah, wow, that's so interesting. Can you tell us a little bit about like the science behind how this works or maybe some of the stories that you've seen back up? Because I know my experience, but for the listeners' sake, and then I'm happy to share my experience as well.
Yeah, definitely. So when I went from life coaching and then I moved into these other modalities, hypnotherapy was a part of it. I was really fascinated with learning neurolinguistic programming, NLP, to help you to understand the language of the mind and change your results. Hypnotherapy was a part of that package. So it wasn't even something that I went after, but I thought, well, this sounds cool. Yeah, I want to learn about this. And then come to find that we're already hypnotized. Just growing, right? Growing up in anything, the best definition I heard of hypnosis is accepting a suggestion without giving it any critical analysis or thought. So, in other words, someone says something to you and you just accept it as true without analyzing it. That's, you've been hypnotized.
Interesting. Wow. I've
Mhm.
never heard of that before, but it's so true. Like I think of like TikTok right away, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, at repetition, how many times is something said to you growing up? That's repeated over and over again. And you have multiple people saying it. Now you've got that social proof. So that repetition, and that's basically what it is.
Wow, that is so interesting.
So if we're already hypnotized with certain things, I mean, look how I was believing that I couldn't make a change until I got a husband, so that there was another income. I mean, who says? Is
Right.
everybody living by that? No, they're not. So so if we've already been hypnotized, now this is an opportunity to unhypnotize yourself and start to install what's more in alignment with your goals.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's amazing. That's like
Yes.
such a great way to describe it and take our power back where we're not constantly giving, the power to who raised us, bless their hearts, right? Because a lot
Yes.
of them are also subconsciously, living with these beliefs and it's generational as well.
Mhm.
Um, that's so interesting.
Yeah, and they all mean well, right? That they have their own paradigms, and of course that's what they're going. That's what they know. That's how they see the world, and that's what they're gonna put onto you. And then as you be, everything is awareness, right? You can't change what you're not aware of. So even having this conversation, it's like, let's question some of the things that we're told, especially if it's something that just doesn't sit well with you or it just feels incongruent. It's like, well, let me question this and what else is possible? And let me look for evidence of that. And of
Wow.
course, we default to what we know and how we've been programmed. And so with hypnosis, you can install new programs so that you have a new default and a new way of operating that aligns with those goals that you have.
Who you actually are, right? Versus
Yeah.
keeping
Yeah.
giving that away. And like, I remember when I was in college and I went to communication school and we talked about identity. A part of like getting my degree was in philosophy. And I
Wow. That's
loved the
philosophy.
concept. Oh my gosh. Like I would totally we should start that together. That's actually like a Eureka idea. Bring in the professors to teach adults in philosophy because I would attend every class. Um,
Yes.
that was one that like I never missed. And they talked about identity in my philosophy courses. And it was a total eureka moment for me. Like, I've never just given myself a clean slate, that was actually one of the systems that they were talking about in philosophy. Like, are you born with a clean slate or are you given, your identity? And it's interesting how our environment can really create our identity when we aren't even aware of it, which is really like what I think you're describing around this piece of
Oh,
identity.
oh yes. I think of my little nephew. He's
Yeah.
3 years old. He's going to be 4, and even my niece. And from when they were little, oh, you're such a good little boy. Oh, good job. And it's kind of like, yeah, we are just giving them their identity.
Yes, I see this all the time too. It's so funny. My mom and I actually just talked about this because for us, it's very generational. And she's like, why have I been told that I need to be good every day? She's like, maybe I want to be bad today. And I'm like, you go, girl, you be bad. You be whatever that is to you, you know?
And we're trained, right? We
Yeah.
I remember, and even when I taught, because I taught elementary school, it's like when the child did something good, you smiled, and when they did something you didn't like, they got a frown, and then they learned, oh, I want the smile, I want the pat on the back or the good job, so I'm going to do this behavior.
Wow. Right. And then it's just reinforcing that same behavior over
Reinforces
and
it.
over. Wow.
Right.
That's so interesting. Now, when you did this, not to get totally back into the school or the concept of children, but I think that that's important for some of our listeners to maybe understand to like, my fiance and I, when we started going to therapy, I'll never forget, he like came out of one session, he goes, I used to be such a silly kid. And he's like, I'm not silly anymore. Like, I want to go back to being silly. He was like, I used to be the class clown. Like, I love to make people laugh. But I really also think, and I'd love to know your perception on this. It's like not just because we love to make them smile, but we love to bring joy, right? To certain people have that piece of their personality. And then some people are like, I could care less, how I make other people feel. What's your perception on that side? And how does hypnosis bring into that as well?
Well, so everybody I feel makes a different meaning out of something. Like there's one thing that somebody gives us a suggestion or says something. It's up to us if we choose to latch onto it and accept it or to completely reject it. You brought up like being funny and laughing and everything. That was something that I did a lot as a kid. I'd like to make joke. It was I got picked on and bullied and everything. So I found that if I just pretended to say like dumb things, I'd get a laugh. Even though I didn't actually, I would just say it on purpose to get the laugh. And so I would try to be funny. And I remember a few times my mom would say, better not laugh too much. You'll be crying by the end of the night. I
Mm.
could have rejected that, but
Yeah.
I made it mean it's not safe to laugh. If I laugh too much, something hurtful is going to make me cry at the end of the night. And I brought it up to her recently because I've had this, and it's common where you're afraid to be too happy because
Yeah.
if things are too good, the ball's going to drop, something bad's going to happen. So it becomes a habit to just kind of stay here at like mediocre to avoid pain. And
Wow.
she goes, I'm so sorry I said that. She goes, my mom used to say that, and that's why I said it. She was hypnotized to believe that, and then she said it to her kids. Now I'm
Right.
24. I was the only one that it impacted in that way. Didn't impact my other three siblings in that way. I made it mean something that they didn't. So we do have choice, and that's where tie it into hypnosis. It's you get to choose and hand pick what is it that I want to believe? What do I want to make my default? The identity, the beliefs, the values, so we're talking about the layers of the mind, the
Yeah. Wow.
potential and the behavior. What do I want to just naturally be compelled to do without having to force myself or effort? And I've done this with social media because I have felt that I have to push myself to come up with content and make video and post. And then, sometimes it's just you lose steam and then you put it off and then you procrastinate. But I've used self hypnosis to make me feel inspired and compelled to be like, yeah, let's make this fun. I get to just, what message do I want to share today? And I get to record it and put it out there. So you can use it to help change your behaviors too. And it does also start with identity and how you see yourself, having that confidence and upgrading your self image.
Yeah, wow. Oh my gosh, I'm so glad that you shared that about social media too. I can't tell you, I'm sure you know, like how many times people come to me and they're like, I hate
Yes,
it,
I
it's like the
do.
worst thing ever. And I'm like, but this is so fun. Like to me, I feel the same way about it. Um, and to your point, would you say it's very important to work with a practitioner like yourself? That's why I love your energy and who you are. And I know my community will too. I feel like because this is such an intimate type of, practice, really, because it's probably something that never ends. Like it's something that you should probably reinforce, I would imagine.
Reinforcement is
I-
key. Yeah, I use the analogy of a house, right? You renovate your kitchen and you get new windows and new tile cabinets and backsplash, and it's beautiful. And then over time, maybe there's a crack in the caulk. Maybe the windows need to be resealed because there's a draft coming in. It needs maintenance.
Yeah.
So yeah, you could get fast change very quickly that is lasting, that is sustainable. And we also then go and interact with life and interact with people. We're human, we're going to have emotions. And then so we do need that reinforcement and maintenance, I would say.
Yeah. Yeah, that's such a good point. And with us all being highly sensitives, my listeners and myself, and that's what I love with that you shared, out of your three siblings, like that's been my whole life. I'm an only child, but like I was always so affected by every little thing, in school, while everybody
Yes.
else is like unfazed. Um,
Uh-huh.
so I'm
And
so
I
happy
just
to
want to say
hear that.
this so quickly because it's so, like you just said, you're being so sensitive. I was repeatedly told that also. Oh, you're just so sensitive. Why are
Yeah.
you so sensitive? Again, suggestion, repetition, and then you become that. And dramatic, that was the other one. Oh, you're so dramatic. And now I hear it being said to my little 1.5-year-old niece. She's so, and I'm like, oh, don't say that. Don't hypnotize her to think she's dramatic. But
Yeah.
she might not, she might assign a different meaning to it, right? Because that's where we have choice. Because people are going to say things, they're going to suggest things, and it's up to us whether we accept it and run with it or we say no and we reject it.
I love that because so many times I feel like my thought loops, and you may resonate with this. I know some of our listeners will. My thought loops of like anxiety are always honestly like around things people have said or something I said that somebody could have taken wrong. And I create these scenarios in my brain, and it's been like happening for so many years that now I can stop it. Not all the time. Like, let's just be real here. Some days it's like, I can't stop it and I have to go distract myself, or I have to get outside. Share helps, depending on the level of anxiousness I'm in. So what is your perception on that? And I really think that with time and some of the hypnosis practices that I've used personally, it's shown me that no matter what is said, like you said, there is choice and that we have the present moment. And I think back on younger me, I'm 29 now, and my early 20s spent a lot of time being very anxious, for long periods of time. And I feel for that part of myself because I'm like, how many things I probably missed out on, with being anxious. And you mentioned something about being present. So I really would love for you to share a little bit more about your perception on that. And just reiterate again, I think it's so important to work with someone like yourself, especially as a highly sensitive, that gets this side of who we are, that isn't totally shut down. Because when people don't have that side, like they can be really harsh, and because it doesn't affect them, right? And like that's a blessing for them versus
Yes.
us. Yeah.
Yeah. Sometimes they just let the words just bounce off like a boomerang, just give it right back. That's a great skill to have. But we're not all like that, right? We internalize, we take things personally, we take it to heart. We
Yeah.
let it mean something, more than it has to. Uh, so, couple things as you were asking the question that were just coming to my mind was um, being mindful of what we tell ourselves. I was told when I was a kid that I had OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder, and I had these like loop of negative thoughts. I was, after losing my uncle and my grandfather within a couple of months, my kid brain thought I was going to lose everybody.
Or
And so I became uh, just like obsessed. I would do this counting ritual where I would do like, put down my dinner plate 4 times. And my brain would tell me, if you don't do this, your mom is going to die. And so I would do it. So that created a lot of anxiety
yeah.
in me.
Wow.
And with, the OCD. And then as I became older, like in my 20s, I really learned the power of I am,
Mm.
like I'm OCD, something I stopped saying, or, my anxiety, like I stopped saying things like that because it becomes your identity.
Yeah,
You
it
see
does.
yourself. So I started making a little shift to, I'm having a feeling of anxiousness right now.
Love that. Yeah.
Because it's very different because everything we tell ourselves is also a suggestion. Like all hypnosis is self-hypnosis. We hypnotize ourselves all the time
Wow.
through what we say to ourselves. So I've become really aware, but I make it like a game, not from a place of beating myself up, because I still do it. I'll say something and I'll go, oh, what I meant was.
Yeah.
It's not I'm mad right now, because common thing I'll say to myself is I'm mad at myself, for maybe how I interacted with a family member, let's just say. Even to this day, I'll still not handle things the way I teach others to handle when they communicate. And then
Yeah.
I'll wait a minute, it's not I'm mad at myself. It's like, what could I have done differently? What can I learn from this situation and get the lesson and then do it differently next time?
Yeah. That's so beautiful. That's what I practice as well. I'm so happy that you shared it with our listeners. And, when I've been in the trenches, right, I really wish I had a Nikki to call, be like, hey, I really need some help here. Like, I am going through it. I don't know who I am, because being an entrepreneur and being in business has challenged me in every area of my life, in every sense of self, with all the negative feedback from clients, and learning how to adjust to that and realizing the business is not me, it's an extension of me, that identity as well. So can you tell us what you do with your clients around business and hypnosis now that we've kind of gotten down to the self portion, which I think is the most important key to start with?
Yeah. So with my clients, I use a variety of tools. Hypnosis is one of them. There's so many different tools. And I use it to really help them to, number one, change at the level of identity,
Wow.
how they see themselves, because that really has to change first. I could give the example because I think it's easiest to understand with weight loss. Someone wants to do the behavior of working out 3 to 5 days a week, and then they muscle through it and they push hard and they kind of force themselves to do it. And then they might do it for a period of time, but then it's like they stop going. I mean, you see the gyms are crowded in January, and I think by February there's a real dip in the
Totally.
numbers. So starting with identity, seeing yourself as a fit, healthy, active person needs to come first before that behavior.
Yeah.
So with hypnotherapy, for example, you can start with installing suggestions that you see yourself as an active and healthy and fit person, and then going down to values. Longevity maybe might be important to somebody, flexibility, agility, and tying in the values, because that's really what motivates us. If you ever want to know, like, what does a person value, look at how they're spending their time.
Wow. Yeah. So
And,
true.
and that shows you. And then going down to beliefs, what do they believe about themselves? Do they believe that they're a healthy and fit person? Um, I've heard people say, oh, I'm shaped like my mother, or I come from an overweight family. So then that's how people can self-sabotage and work against themselves, because they try to do the behaviors, but they focus on action. And it's like, if
Mhm.
you just start with the identity and the values and the beliefs and your potential, you'll just be pleasantly surprised to notice that suddenly you're like, I'm going to go outside for a walk. Like the behavior just changes naturally,
Wow.
if that
That's
makes sense. Yeah,
yeah, definitely. That makes complete sense. And like what you shared with social media and
that's a business, right? With the business exam, yeah. So with social media, when I was struggling, I was feeling overwhelmed with how much content I had to create, and I
yeah.
eventually just delegated it because I realized I can't wear all the hats and do it all.
Yes.
But to get me like staying consistent, I started with identity. Well, who do I need to be, to be showing up? And it's like, and what do I value? Well, I value impact and transformation. So if I prioritize that. So this is no longer about me and feeling like I don't have the energy to do it. What's more important is that I'm creating an impact in the world and that I'm helping people to transform. And that fueled me. And then seeing myself as a person of impact, to then just go ahead and let me just write the post. I had the inspiration first, and then it became easy where I could do it quickly and put it out there.
That's so great. Yeah, that makes such a lot of sense when you explain that paralysis analysis, right? And then we start to look for, like
Right.
you're saying, all those things,
Yes.
like us being tired. And it's like, oh, I don't want to come up with that post. I don't want to have to edit it. I don't feel like it. And that's what I go back to as well. Like, what is the mission here? Why am I even doing this? Because if it just feels like another thing on the to-do list, it will never get done, right?
Exactly. Yes. And when you can go back to what drives you, what's important to you, that is a great way to fuel yourself.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. Do you have any other like tips for us when it comes to hypnosis
Sure.
around business that you can share with us that maybe we
Yes.
can start to incorporate in our everyday?
Good. You could do some self hypnosis for people who are maybe not ready to work with a practitioner and they want to just do it themselves. I will say, like anything else, it just takes repetition. It's like learning how to ride a bike. You're a little wobbly the first time, but over time with practice, it gets easy. You become more familiar with it. So, self hypnosis, you could do it in 3 steps. It's super simple. Uh, but again, give yourself some time so that you can, because it's interesting. It's like each time you do something, it just becomes more, you could do it without thinking. Think about driving. The first time you ever drove and you had to really focus and pay attention, and maybe you were a little nervous. And then eventually you're driving and you're barely paying attention and you arrive at your destination and you're like, oh, I'm here already.
Yeah,
It
totally.
would be the same thing with self hypnosis. It'll get faster and easier and more automatic each time you do it. The first step is to get yourself in that relaxed, focused state. And how I tell people the best, easiest way to do it is to count down from 10 down to 0. And each time they say the number, they say 10, like look up, you know, raise your eyes, say 10, close your eyes, and then
Okay.
open your eyes, 9, raise them and close them. And just that raising of the eyes, you know how when, did you ever see somebody like start to fall asleep? Like a
Yeah.
baby, let's just say, what do their eyes do? They go up. So
Yeah.
that signals the brain to relax, slow down those brain waves. So you're assisting in the induction to just raise your eyes and close them. So open, close, counting down from 10 to 0. That's step one. Once you're now relaxed, now you can repeat one suggestion. I tell people just repeat one, just because you
Okay.
don't want to have to remember all the suggestions you want to give yourself. Then you've got to become too conscious. So, one suggestion, so we were talking about social media. So, or making video, let's say, or posting content. And it's like, I choose to be a person of impact. I'm just making up a positive suggestion, or I prioritize making an impact every day, something like that. And you just repeat that positive suggestion over and over again. What I'll do is I'll set a timer on my phone for 5 to 10 minutes, depending on how much time I have. So I don't have to worry about how long my eyes have been closed.
Right.
And just repeat, repeat, repeat over and over again. And then the third step is to just bring yourself back up to wakeful awareness. So then I just count 1 to 5, eyes open, wide, aware.
Wow.
And what I'll find is that later on in the day, I'll be like making dinner and that thought will just be there. And I go, oh, I'm a person of impact. Oh, how nice. It's just there because it got installed.
Yeah. Oh
Mhm.
my gosh, that's so interesting, right? Because it like I'm reminding myself of like my defaults, right? Where it's like, oh, I have so much to do. Like when your brain has a lot of space, it'll fill in, right? All of those
Yes,
thoughts over time. But this is now the new install. It's like I'm imagining like a new plug, you know,
yes,
into your brain
exactly.
waves. That's so cool.
Exactly. Yes, I love that analogy. And then
That's
you can do
interesting.
it, you could just do it again. You could do it as often as you want. But I always get excited when I hear a thought that I like with repetition, just said over and over again. And it's like, oh, there it is.
Yes. Oh
Yeah.
my gosh, that's great. Because I've done this with meditation. Like a lot of our listeners will probably say that. But I really find, like, again, in my experience with hypnosis, it's been much more impactful faster. When I
Mhm.
was rewiring my brain through meditation, I mean, it really took months, to kind of like come out of that state of like fight or flight was why I was
Yeah.
doing it. But maybe hypnosis would have been able to install some of that a little bit faster.
A little bit faster. Yeah. And it's very similar to meditation. And even with hypnosis, there's levels of that, like how deep in trance you can get.
Wow.
And you don't have to be that deep. Honestly, you can be hypnotized during a conversation. Somebody could be telling you a story. And you know how when someone's like really listening and it's like they're just kind of like nodding their head and they're
Yeah.
kind of start to enter that state and
Yeah.
they can easily accept a suggestion. Have you ever had like a dream after about like something you had a conversation with someone and then you had a dream of it? It's like,
Yeah.
yeah, that's what it kind of just got in the subconscious mind and then your subconscious mind was working to resolve it while you were sleeping.
That is so interesting. Yeah, I never have like had anybody share that side of it with me and describe it the way that you've described it. It's very interesting.
It
I find the
is.
subconscious so unique. Like I can see why that was so intriguing for you when you were first, entering into this like space, I guess, transitioning from
Yeah.
teaching.
Yeah, because I've always been fascinated with changing the mind because I was never comfortable in my own mind. Going back to the negative thoughts, the OCD, it's like I want to feel better in my own skin. And I've done it consciously for many years in therapy, and I wanted to find a way to speed it up. And then I found when you work with the subconscious mind, it's a lot faster and more lasting.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. It's such a great tool. And so many people, as we touched upon before the recording, they resist hypnosis, in my experience as well. And I can understand, like I was saying in the middle of the set of our recording today, is like, I'm like at the session, I feel like I'm like hypnotized. I'm hypnotized by our conversation. No, in the middle of our podcast, when you're handing over your subconscious mind, you really need to trust that person.
Yes.
You really need to know them. And I think that that may be what holds people up, because they're like, my subconscious, like, what's hidden down there? Do you think
Yeah.
it's also a fear around, yikes, what might I find out about myself that I've been able to like numb out over the years?
Yes, that is that fear of, what if something comes up that I'm not ready for? You know,
Yeah.
how I have learned it is that the subconscious only brings up to the conscious what is ready to be resolved. So
Wow.
if you're not ready to resolve it, you just won't become conscious of it. It'll just stay subconscious to protect you. The number one job of the subconscious mind is to protect you and keep you safe. So it's never going to bring up something that you are not ready for, and when it does come up, that's an invitation to process and heal and move to your next level.
Wow, what like a gift that is as well, to address, that those parts of ourselves. I remember I felt like that during therapy. Like, what do I have to cut out of my life? Like you hear about like all these people going to therapy, and this was years ago. I feel like now it's a little bit more common, and not as like taboo, we might say. But I was so fearful going into therapy that I was going to have to like change my life, or like I told myself I would have to cut people out of my life, like these crazy things. I remember my therapist was like, that's not really like what this is about at all. She's like, you don't have to do anything that you don't want to do. Like, you also don't have to talk about anything that you don't feel called to talk about. And that
Mhm.
was a really aha moment for me, that we have a sense of control of self, right? Like, we might not control, the thought, or feel like we can control the thoughts until we go through hypnosis or go through therapy. But that was a large problem of why I held myself back from it for so long, because of that fear.
Because of that fear.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and there are. I mean, I'm not very familiar with it, but I've heard of techniques like regression and going
Yeah.
back. That's a totally different modality.
Right.
It's not hypnosis per se. Hypnosis is more, how do you relax the mind, get the conscious mind out of the way. That's like the gatekeeper. Kind of send the conscious mind out to lunch. So now your subconscious mind is wide open to positive suggestions that's going to help that align with the goals that you have. So going back to working with somebody that you trust, that's really important,
Yeah.
that you do that, so you could feel comfortable enough to allow your body and mind to relax.
Yeah, to really get into that state. I always go back to, like, I saw this one hypnosis, it was more like a magician situation where
Oh,
the person, like, was not going into hypnosis, and I was like, see, they're, like, fighting it. You can almost, like, see them fighting the
yeah, and you could.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
you can see their conscious mind, like,
Mhm.
coming in, which I don't know that I would like a magician to hypnotize me either. I certainly
No.
wasn't raising my hand, so bless that person's heart for going up on stage. But yeah, I think the practitioner piece of it, and working with someone like yourself, for our listeners, they would feel very safe with you and know that they're not going to be judged, right, for being sensitive or having
Right.
these thoughts or hanging on to something that clients said to us years ago, because like you said, it can be a filter. And in my experience, it also maybe kept me small, like you mentioned, from not growing my agency as much as I maybe could have over those years. And I think that's what so many business owners lack, is seeing those parts of themselves that is playing too small.
That is huge.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's a common one. I know I went through that. Like, let me just sit on the sidelines. Let me stay under the radar to stay safe and play it small to avoid possible criticism or rejection or whatever it is.
Yeah.
So those are all programs that we have that, like I said, we've been hypnotized to believe that. Now it's time to unhypnotize, especially if it's not serving you well, then why
Right.
keep it? Why keep that?
Yeah, yeah. And we have the choice now. That's what we learned today through today's
Yes.
episode. So thank you so much, Nikki. Can you tell everybody how to get in touch with you, how they can work with you? And then, of course, for all our listeners, if you're multitasking, send me a DM. I'll directly connect you with Nikki, or you can just click the link in the show notes below.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Of
You can
course.
connect with me all over social media. On Instagram, I am Mindful Matters LLC. That's the company name. And then my website is my name, nikkigangemi.com. And I would reach out, connect. I would love to on any platform on social media that you are. Uh, and yeah, continue the conversation.
Yeah, perfect. I know we all learned a lot today. I certainly did. So thank you so much again. And hopefully we'll have you back on again soon.
I'd love to. Thanks for the space
Thanks.
to have this conversation.
Of course.